I don't know if you're like me, but I've been obsessed with the Light No Fire trailer ever since it dropped last night. I live reacted to it and I've watched it over and over again. And in this video, I want to sit down and break down all the interesting things that you might have missed when we watch this trailer. There's so much detail. There's so many interesting bits that I haven't seen talked about online yet. So I hope to kind of illuminate you and get you as excited as I am for what this game potentially could be. So hello everyone and welcome to the channel. My name's Brian if you happen to be new around here. Today I want to talk to you guys as a developer myself, as somebody who is looking at the state of what they've shown us, what we can start to speculate on, but also just the little hints here and there throughout the trailer. So we're going to go through the whole trailer. I'm going to point them out. I'd love to know if I missed anything or if you noticed anything or what you're most excited about. You can sound off in the comments below, and if you feel like this video earns it, hit that like button, as that's a great way of helping out. You can always double tap this like button. That is apparently it's been stuck for a lot of people, so it's up to you. But anyway, let's go ahead and dive in. I also want to talk about Hello Games and how they're a rebuilder of trust. I want to talk about the 5 years of development and also how this is more ambitious than No Man's Sky. So they said a lot of interesting things at the reveal, but first let's dive into the trailer and then we can come back and circle back to that discussion here in a second. Now, as I'm about to hit play, what's really interesting about this is that most of every scene, there's a couple scenes where I only counted 3, but you see a 4-player experience. You see 4 players on an adventure together, and you can already start to tell that there are a different race. You have a bunny race that's listed here with this cloak, and there's even more races that are hinted at throughout the trailer, but let's go ahead and get started. I love a multiplayer Earth idea, and the procedural nature of it, when it says procedural here, it does make me think that we're all spinning up our own kind of universe world and our friends can come visit, so it's not necessarily a, persistent Earth universe, but who knows? I'd be curious to see if that's something that would appease you. That would be interesting in the long run. But you can already see a mount, you can see an interesting artifact or something. I don't know if that's player built, and the lush grass and vegetation is absolutely breathtaking and gorgeous. The visuals behind this game are like outstanding, and I cannot wait to see it in action. Now, I want to point this out here. You see a fantasy Earth. We're going to rewind just a little bit. I want you to pay attention to the little skeletons here. You have a giant skeleton that's just kind of moving forward. It's an interesting thing. It's calling out the fantasy Earth, meaning, yes, we might be fighting skeletons, but I do wonder if we ourselves can become them, because if you look at the smaller skeletons, they look like they're moving more like a player would move, but maybe that's just amazing AI that's generated. So if we let it play, you can kind of see them running here. I'm gonna actually rewind it just a little bit further, and you see how they're running, and it just looks more natural as a player. In terms of the unexplored Earth, teasing off these big orbs in the distance, and again, a 4-player party. This looks very Final Fantasy-esque to me. If you guys remember the early Final Fantasy games, this essentially is kind of a very picturesque view. And you see, some glowing weapons here in the corner. You see some horns and different armor that people are wearing. And this player right here, we do see another short race later in this trailer, but I'm just kind of curious and calling that out here for you guys. Some underwater, which you see lots of fish, and just like the swimming in this looks beautiful, and the transition from swimming out into the world is absolutely breathtaking. It makes me wonder like what kind of content is going to be like underwater, and you see the water effect on there. And here's where things get really cool. So if we start to jump in here and I just let him step, first things first, we have a floating cube off in the distance, and you see obviously some kind of flag, and it's like you see the Game Awards from the video itself. But check this staff out. It's got this like crystal right here. Player's got a backpack. He's got some kind of pointed hat, very mage-esque, if you will. So more leaning into that fantasy Earth in this regards. So yeah, I think it's cool. I'm a huge fan of casters. We're gonna unpause, and then we get some gliders. I'm gonna back it up a little bit. Yeah, and you can see a couple players on these gliders moving throughout the game of the world. I think the traversal that they've already kind of teased off in this game is absolutely fantastic. And then we see some bird mounts. I keep, it goes too fast. Then you see some bird mounts, and you see the bunny here getting on top of it. So different player races, player mounts of all kinds of variety, gliders, birds. We are going to see dragons here in a little bit. Again, the field is pretty awesome. Now, Couple things you see in the background. You see obviously some dragons, you see some house building, and I'm looking at the weapons. I was wondering if this was like a gun or a crossbow. It just depends on how it is, but it could also be some kind of mace of some kind of sort. So when I get to here, this looks more like a handle and less like a bow. But yeah, we do see bows in the future. I don't see any damage actually happening to the tree itself, and that's not necessarily a game breaking ordeal. Just when playing PAX Day and having like trees and objects takes damage, that's gonna be interesting. In terms of its proceduralness of the earth itself, if these things get chopped down, do they kind of respawn themselves, or is it something where like you gotta wait a lot of time before like a resource comes back? It means it'd be interesting to see if people kind of, in a way, Minecraft and clear landscape and build all kinds of cities within their earth in and of itself. Oh, also a couple things to point out. You can see here from the UI, it looks like the user is playing with the staff. You also have some type of minimalistic UI over here as well. And throughout the entire presentation, the UI is very invisible. It gives me that Ghost of Tsushima and maybe even PAX Day kind of vibe where things are the game is basically telling you where to go without having to have a lot of heads-up display, which I think is pretty cool. Again, you see a bunny race. Now this looks like a badger. Like you can kind of see, like if I kind of slowly step it back, a different set of ears. It could be a badger or some other race of some kind. Just teasing another one. Obviously shorter in stature, bulky, strong. I think that's just going to be cool. Lots of player races will be exciting to see. And then you see a hummingbird take off with the player off into the distance, and a couple of quick cuts here which kind of allude at a couple of new weapons. So I'm going to kind of slowly step this way forward. You can see a great sword. At least I would classify this as a great sword. It could just be a long sword. It looks almost like a fishing pole. Obviously we see different kinds of backpacks on the players. We see some various different boats. You can see another dragon off in the distance again, and even more. Like the fact is, like, again, a fully realized open world within a video game. We haven't seen that in a while. Or I guess this would be I guess it depends on how you want to classify it. Here we see a couple archers on the ridge. This made me think of chocobos. If you guys are Final Fantasy fans, you'll get that reference. But it looks like here are a couple different things, people going on the hunt, a riverbed with some water, and this is just a gorgeous scene. And then it cuts to a flaming sword with a light explosion and some big ass monster in the background, which is really cool to see in this case. So lots of exciting little references. And this is where I freaked out because I love dragons, and the fact is they're going to let us ride on some dragons. I wonder what that is going to entail in the game, but then you just see them taking off. You see again ships, little islands, other things that are going on, a lot of quick cuts to different mounts flying up to these tall Everest style mountains, and you can start to see here in the distance a floating island. This is incredible. Like, I'm really excited to see how this plays out. And then I like this scene. We get a lot of weather effects. You get these torches. You get this weird ancient, I'm going to call it an ancient, in the background that's awakening. I wonder if that's some kind of dungeon or some piece of content that people are working their way towards. Lots of different mounts, flying mounts. And here is also where it's interesting. Here another, again, that what I was calling out as maybe a badger style race. You have the bunny. You have a whole, NPCs, I'm assuming. Otherwise, this could allude to that we have kind of areas where more than 4 people can play in your world, and that would be truly breathtaking, moving towards this door in this interesting developed area, meaning that I would assume that if this isn't player built, that there are settlements, there are cities, there are things to find and discover. And I'm curious as to the story and how they how do they set this up for us as players. And it looks like, yeah, as the player is the main focus here. More dragon riding, I appreciate that. And then off into the distance, another one of those giant orbs into building of the logo itself for the game. Now, I feel like No Man's Sky launched in a difficult state. I felt, people said that they felt lied to. However, I would push back now that, yes, it sucked the way it is, but the team, I think, has really rebuilt that level of trust. And that's why one of the things that when we see things in this trailer, and feel how it feels, I think this is truly something to be excited about. Already with 5 years of development, so this isn't some type of trailer which is like, oh, it's a trailer to build hype so that we get the funding to make the game. No, we've already been working on the game, but here's where the developer side of me comes into play, and you might find interesting or not. I don't know. You let me know. The team is actually quite small. They have a 12-man team working on this currently. Now, that doesn't mean that the team won't scale up as the game gets closer and closer to release, but I would expect that we're gonna, obviously not have a release date yet, that the game is still a couple of years away from release itself, and this in and of itself is kind of their proof of concept of, hey, we've got a small team, we're real agile. What that means is that you can find the fun really quickly. A lot of people I see online talk about like, oh, the team size is huge, that means it's going to be great. The bigger the team size, it actually can mean that you go slower overall in development because there's so many other things that you have to account for. So having a smaller impact and a tighter team means they can find the fun. They're like, yep, this is a lot of fun, this is really cool, and then they can bring in the people to really kind of polish and refine it so that it really is a fleshed out system and a fleshed out experience. So I'm thrilled that they announced that the team is just 12 people right now. I think what we're seeing in this case is already exciting, and that's one of the reasons why I want to make this video. Now, they say it's like their most ambitious, and when they talk about the first real open world game, this feels from the get, where like we're seeing with Star Citizen and what we're seeing with PAX Day and what we're seeing in a way, well, Ashes of Creation is this big unknown for me just at the moment. I'm not knocking it, I'm just curious about when and why. Will it be everything it pertains to be? I hope so. But we're seeing, I think, this interesting push into updated technology that I think sets a new milestone, just like Baldur's Gate 3 set a new milestone for the CRPG, or maybe even the RPG as it exists outright in these games. And what I mean by that is that, let's say this game comes out and truly lights people on fire, and it sets a new standard for what an open world game is. You start to wonder, how does somebody follow this up in terms of another game that doesn't do what everything this tries to do, and then essentially you're like, well, Light No Fire is way better. And so where Star Citizen looks to be an interesting, again, another touchstone milestone where when people play it, essentially where gamers then go like, of course, this is obviously the way forward. They've really done a good job, and that sets that new expectation for other games to follow suit. And maybe, just maybe, from a developer perspective, if they built an engine that is basically handling this, that's a good way that they can license on their engine and make additional money and profit from the game itself. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe for more content, jump in the Discord and get involved in the conversation beyond the comments section, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. But until then, take care.